There was a knock at my door at 8 p.m. I already knew who it was. I also knew this wasn't really about the shower.
I'm so sorry. Our boiler broke down. I just need to wash up real quick. Is that okay?
She stood there with a towel in her hand, looking at me like she hadn't spent the last 3 months working up to exactly this moment. I stepped aside and let her in.
Free tree for. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
I'm in my early 30s. Grew up in a small town, moved to the city a few years back to find work, and ended up in the kind of apartment that happens when your priorities are location and price and nothing else. Old building, worn fixtures, walls thin enough that you can hear your neighbors shift in their sleep. The neighborhood sits on the edge of one of the city's entertainment districts, bars, late-night spots, the kind of places that keep unusual hours. A lot of my neighbors worked nights. A lot of them came home loud. I had a girlfriend. Had been with her for a while, things were steady, no complaints. I kept to myself mostly. Went to work, came home, minded my own business. And then there was the woman next door. I noticed her the first week. Hard not to. She was the kind of person who filled a hallway when she walked through it. Early 40s, I guessed, though she carried it in a way that made the number feel like a technicality. Good face. Better figure. The kind that a fitted jacket couldn't quite contain. She moved like someone who had been looked at her whole life and had made peace with it. First time we properly talked was outside the building. She introduced herself, said I reminded her of her younger brother, said she hoped we could be friendly neighbors. I said sure. I was polite. I wasn't particularly interested. That changed. Slowly. Then all at once. She started knocking. Not constantly, not aggressively, just regularly. A small container of homemade food here, a bag of fruit there. Once a pack of snacks with a note that said, "Saw these and thought of you." She was lonely, that much was obvious. She lived alone, worked nights, came home in the early hours. I'd hear her door close at 2, 3 in the morning. Once, at 4 a.m., someone started banging on my door hard enough that I thought something was wrong. I opened it and she practically fell through the entrance, eyes glazed, barely standing, apologizing in fragments. Wrong door. She'd confused mine with hers. She couldn't walk. I couldn't exactly put her back in the hallway. I got her to the couch, put a blanket over her, and went back to bed. In the morning, she was embarrassed and sorry and offered to cook me breakfast by way of apology. I told her it was fine. After that, I started paying more attention to her. She was pretty, in the full, unhurried way that some women get in their 40s, not despite her age, but because of it. There was a confidence to how she held herself, a warmth in how she talked, a specific kind of ease that younger women were still working toward. I was aware of it. I was also aware that I had a girlfriend, and that being aware of a thing is not the same as doing anything about it. I kept things friendly, neighborly, nothing more. And then came the afternoon that changed the math. I just kvar ju plier, but line variancing serum, but it was a Saturday. My girlfriend was out for the day. I'd eaten, cleaned up, and decided to get some training in. We were planning a beach trip in a few weeks, and I'd been pushing myself to get back in shape. No shirt, workout shorts, the windows cracked for airflow because the apartment got warm fast. I was mid-set when the doorbell rang. I grabbed the door without thinking.
Oh, hi. Sorry to bother you. Do you have a screwdriver I could borrow? I'm trying to fix something and I don't have any tools.
She was looking at me. Or, more precisely, she was looking at my chest, and then making a visible effort to look at my face, and then glancing back down briefly before catching herself. Yeah, hold on. I handed her the screwdriver. She thanked me. I went back inside. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again.
I'm so sorry. I can't figure it out. Would you mind taking a look? It'll only take a second.
I had predicted this, roughly, from the moment I'd handed her the screwdriver while standing in my doorway without a shirt on. Not because I thought highly of myself, just because I'd been paying attention. Sure, I said. Give me a second.
I did not put a shirt on.
Her apartment was a mirror image of mine. Same layout, same worn fixtures, same view of the alley from the back window. She'd made it warmer somehow. Plants on the windowsill, a throw blanket on the couch, the small details of someone who spent real time in their space. The shelf was in pieces on the living room floor. It was a simple flat pack unit. 6 panels, 8 screws, a diagram that a 12-year-old could follow. I crouched down and started sorting the pieces. She crouched down beside me. Close. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of her arm near mine.
I just couldn't figure out which piece goes where. The diagram makes no sense to me.
It's pretty straightforward once you see the pattern.
See, that's what I can never do. See the pattern. My brain doesn't work like that.
She leaned in to look at the diagram I was holding, and her shoulder pressed lightly against mine. I took my time. The shelf was a 10-minute job, maximum. I stretched it to 30, explaining each step in more detail than necessary, double-checking connections that didn't need checking, pausing to ask her to hold pieces in place that I could have managed on my own. Every time I asked her to hold something, she had to lean across me or reach past me or crouch close enough that her hair fell near my shoulder. She wasn't pulling back.
I wasn't either.
You're really good at this. Do you just know how to do everything?
Not everything, just the practical stuff.
That's incredibly useful. A pause. My ex-husband was completely useless with anything like this. I used to have to call someone every time a light bulb needed changing.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. She handed me the last screw, among other things.
I tightened the final connection and stood the shelf up. Solid. Level.
Oh, that looks perfect. She stepped back to look at it, genuinely pleased. Thank you so much, really.
It was nothing.
Can I at least make you coffee? Or tea? I have both.
I'm good. I should get back to my workout. The expression that crossed her face lasted about half a second before she put the smile back in place.
Of course. Right. Well, thank you again.
I went back to my apartment, sat down on the couch, and thought about that half-second expression. She had expected something. The tools, the shirtless visit, the 30 minutes of deliberately slow assembly. She'd read all of it correctly and arrived at a reasonable conclusion. And I'd walked out and left her with nothing. Good. After that, the visits increased. She found new reasons every few days. A jar she couldn't open, a question about the building's recycling schedule, a piece of fruit she'd bought too much of and didn't want to waste. Each time I was friendly, warm even, but I kept things exactly where they were, neighborly, nothing more. I watched her recalibrate each time. She'd arrive expecting something to shift, and I'd give her a pleasant conversation and send her home with the jar opened or the question answered, and she'd leave with that same careful, controlled expression. She wasn't used to this.
That much was clear.
You're very hard to read, you know that?
She said it one evening, standing in my doorway with a can of beer she'd brought over, like she'd been thinking about how to phrase it for a while. Am I?
Most guys are much more obvious.
I've heard that's not always a good thing. She laughed, short, a little rueful.
No, it's really not.
She handed me the beer. I invited her in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch and talked for an hour about nothing important. And when she left, she said goodnight in the careful voice of someone keeping something contained. I locked the door and smiled at the ceiling. It was only a matter of time. March. Still cold in the mornings, still cold after dark. My girlfriend had gone to visit her family for the weekend. Left Saturday morning, back Sunday evening. I had the apartment to myself. I spent most of Saturday doing very little. Games, delivery food, the specific luxury of a day with no obligations. By evening, I was comfortable and well-fed and completely relaxed. At 8:07 p.m., someone knocked. I already knew.
I'm so sorry. Our boiler broke down. I just need to wash up real quick. Is that okay?
She was holding a small toiletry bag and a folded towel, and she looked at me with an expression that was doing a lot of work to appear casual. The building's boilers were independent units. If her hot water was out, mine wouldn't be affected. We both knew this. Of course, I said. Come in. I showed her to the bathroom, told her the hot water took about 30 seconds to warm up, and went back to the living room to watch TV. She was in there for maybe 15 minutes. I heard the water run, then stop. Heard the small sounds of someone moving around in a bathroom that wasn't theirs. Then the door opened. She came out with her hair loosely wrapped in the towel, face clean, wearing the same clothes she'd arrived in. Without the careful presentation of her usual visits, the hair done, the outfit considered, she looked softer, more real. She sat down on the couch beside me. Close.
You must get lonely too, being here by yourself.
Sometimes.
How do you handle it?
I find things to do. A pause. She looked at me directly.
I've been so lonely, I don't know what to do with myself. I keep coming over here with these ridiculous excuses, and you're always so calm about it. Doesn't anything get to you?
Some things.
Like what?
I looked at her. She held my gaze for exactly 1 second, and then she crossed the distance between us. There was nothing tentative about it. No question, no hesitation. 3 months of fruit and side dishes in jars that didn't need opening. 3 months of carefully managed proximity and calculated retreats, and she'd finally arrived at the point where containing it was more effort than letting it go. I didn't back away.
Do you know how anxious you've made me? All this time?
I had an idea.
You were doing it on purpose.
A little.
That is genuinely terrible of you.
I know. She laughed, and then she wasn't laughing anymore.
Free creature.
After that night, the dynamic between us settled into something comfortable and unspoken. She still knocked, still brought food, still found reasons. But the pretense was gone. We both knew what the visits were, and neither of us wasted time pretending otherwise. If I called, she came. If she knocked, I let her in. No labels, no complications. Just 2 people in adjacent apartments who had quietly agreed to make each other's evenings less lonely. My girlfriend didn't know. She had no reason to look next door. The neighbor never asked about my girlfriend. I never brought her up. Some things stay in their separate compartments, and as long as you're careful, the compartments don't touch. I just had to make sure they stayed that way. For now, as long as we were both careful, as long as we kept it quiet, this was something I could hold on to. 1 wall between 2 apartments. That's all it took. That's where this story ends. Thank you for listening. If this one stayed with you, subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications. See you in the next one.